You're going to add more to the perm,
Just a tiny bit, and then I'll go and do the theory.
and then
The theory stuff in
So
order.
it's topicality, permutation theory, right?
Yeah. So topicality, firm, conditionality, fixed.
my sub is here.
Yeah, it is.
I'll just keep sitting here.
I don't like that.
We're good?
No, you were on T first.
Hmm?
You were on overrule first.
Yeah.
Are these theory, do you think it's going to get huge? Can we do
Yes.
a separate sheet of paper? Okay.
Yeah, Brown.
Yes.
Guesses. Second of Brown. Wizard, please.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I have any left. I don't want to judge
Okay.
either of these teams.
We're done.
Right now, and then you're.
Just under 6.
Good, that's fine. You won't answer the phone anyway.
My next day of departure, I am staying forever.
Yeah, because then you know what they'll do to you.
Well, that's right, I left
Yesterday. I like that. Were you just writing that on there?
I don't think.
I prefer if you include yourself in there too.
I don't know who these people are.
Okay. It's always a new debate.
This is a new debate.
Thank
You
you.
didn't like the first one, start over.
Yes. Rewind. We're all good?
Oh, wait a minute.
Is there like a video?
T. Well,
And then conditionality, fixed.
yeah, whatever.
Just low.
You guys knew what I was looking
Oh, they know.
Okay. All their arguments about why they don't have to be an explicit overrule means that the counterclaim will be able to swallow stuff, especially in a world in which they have malcried evidence about how the violence against women act is applicable to the arguments about sexual violence because this is part of the text. Additionally, the framework arguments that they make on the counterclaim are not the criticism are not reason to reject the negative team because we're not going for the criticism. We are fiating through governmental institution, which checks back all of that, as well as the fact that all of their answers mean that we are able to solve for the entirety of the affirmative case. Additionally, they say plain text focuses the fact that there's no warrant or justification. All we do is we force people to write their plain text right by the time the NDT comes around. Plus, plain text focus is good for a few reasons. First, predictability. Sample ground plain text is the only thing you give a point around prepare with a line deviation which destroys fear around preparation. No place one and secret action development justifies affirmative conditionality. Choose judge intervention. Plain text focus off the arbitrary nature of employing judges because it is something that can definitely be looked at and valued by the judge after round. The plain text says it does gender based on gender, or it says it based on sexual difference. This is the reason why we are able to link and criticize this. And the third is that shifting plain text standard knowledge destroys class, but also education because the benefits predictability also create conditionality debate. Fourth is they wrote it, they should have to defend the firms has an infinite amount of time to choose what they put in the one you see and how they were they claim they did defend the plain text decision because we have arguments based upon the plain text. They say cross-examination checks because this is not a reason why we check the competition, especially in one which the counterclaim and the framework arguments make you have to run a counterclaim to compete, which means that we should be able to have picks and things like this. Now go to the counterclaim. Cross-claim permutation arguments not common to it. Zach and Evans that he read in the two NCs, it goes hand in hand with the family evidence. It indicates the way in which the court rules explicitly determines how they interpret the law, the legal language of the law. This also indicates that the affirmative have to sever the action of the plan because it's based on gender violence being able to go for those types of healing for those remedies. We would have to sever that in order to get out of the social historical construction based upon the sexual difference. That's also in the Zach and Evans. Additionally, the plain text still exists, which means that they would have to look to those decisions, even if there are two decisions that still leads to predictability arguments. We've already talked about. Plus, it's the one which there are evidence from the support for the advantages is still based upon the sexualization of the woman. That's the Siegel 96 evidence from the 1AC. It indicates things based on sexualized assault and gender violence, which means that they are having these types of conflations of the cards. Well, the fact that counterflows also the overall Morrison because it acts as the federal civil remedy and the solves to the arguments that made to a CIE the implicit overrule, which I've already stated above. Now go to the first theory argument, which was conditionality. First, we're negative. We only have to spend when the affirmative bad things for damage to the offense of the plain text. Those their framework arguments and 2AC nullify and solves all their offense because they can go for it to eliminate one half the conditional arguments, i.e. they didn't have to answer the criticism. And plus, when the affirmative arguments are critical of negative ground is essential to test it. The affirmative, both the critical world and the policy world, because the affirmative has an infinite bias, including path for the first and last species. Plus, this is a key to increasing the breadth of education and information to be, because we discussed both in the ground, what is good because it increases education multiple times. They can't win the outweigh the what would be good because convincing you to have 15 debates about the KSR just says education, which we have no hope of additional time trade-off. We have to read two specification arguments. You shouldn't have spent as much time there. You know, we're probably not going to go for it. Plus, your offense is using the words plain text. You should be adding on. You could have justification for the words that you put in the plain text. That you cross-plot the plain text focus arguments here. What is good. Plus, this is the same as taking dissent gets its way out because we are able to stay coming up permutation check any risk of abuse. It's the fact that you reject the argument, not the same additional and round abuse. Plus, side by side abuse from the past and break for debate theme from that prep time, which means that we need the conditional counterplans to offset the debate. Plus, this conditionalized education makes the point testing from multiple angles, increasing thinking on your feet. These subpoints multiple worlds, encourages strategic thinking models, the affirmative and negative increasing overall. The education sees subpoints this is key to policy making just because the affirmative one's a counterplans and that necessarily a good idea doesn't mean the plain text is a better idea than the criticism or vice versa. And we're in search of the best policy option, especially because we have evidence of and the evidence indicates how the way in which the plain text implemented impacts all these things. They say strategy and time skip. This is already answered above. These things are inevitable, especially because the one that was negative gets a block in. We have arguments about the plain text is key. Additionally, they go to the PICS debate. First is that our interpretation negative can make out words are simply put in the plain text. And the second is the saltier offense is key to preventing quality PICS allowing negative test everybody the advocacy. Third is this forces you to defend your plain text. We play out terms explicitly in the plain text. The text is key to negative strategy for test defend everywhere in the plain text. Plus, this also acts on a functional level, which is already explained above on the permutation. And the two want to say additionally, fourth is literature text space with specific evidence about how they use the word and how it creates people's objects, leads to types of dehumanization and internal violence and extinction. That's the error we want to see impact, which is not our answer. This means that it's most predictable. Also, literature I'm there to answer. The fact is most world picture for all time in Congress are their political willings and beliefs. The way in which they tried to pass certain resolutions, i.e., they decide what words to use for them, and then they vote for them. The sixth is negation theory, which is already explained above. Additionally, the affirmative bias legitimates PICS. The affirmative gets the implement of the to choose topic education first and last piece picture key to strategic equality. Is education PICS force the affirmative to defend and negative to research every facet of the plan as well as the topic, which means that we need. This is also key to solving for things like racist sexism and the completion of sex and gender. Additionally, 9 strategic education PICS force the affirmative and negative to explore a multitude of possibilities in terms of guarantee arguments selectivity. This solves for the types of lazy debate. Plus, this forces better plan writing, which is the key to better types of education and the better debates because you should have to fix your plan text you've had since August to figure this out. Additionally, this checks any worship acts abuse because the PICS especially after writing big plans. Additionally, this PICS is uniquely key to negative ground. The ace of points that it calls into question the entirety of the words and the decision that the resolution mandates that they're doing, which makes the counterplans most predictable. B subpoints the resolution justifies their pick because we read and negate the gender-based aspects of the plan. This is key to negative ground, which is predictability based upon the arguments that we should be able to debate. The C subpoints the affirmative solvency mechanism and advantages based upon the assumptions of the gender, which is in a historical social construction, which this is already explained above. This is not a sexual difference. In order to have a fair ground and fairness in education, we have to be able to negate this interpretation from a functional as well as an implementation mechanism. Additionally, education should always be evaluated over ground. The first point is that you will not isolate a single impact into ground arguments do not terminally end in education. If we put our interpretation leads to more educational debates, we skip the internal link to all your ground arguments. The second is the learning about more difficult things would be more privileged because debates are infinitely more fair. The basic point is first and last speech of these, and from prep time C is the impact turn option debates that consistently have smaller scenarios. The third reason is that their ground arguments are an exaggeration. While items from the second category only means that teams will have to that is not that the Afrodeck would always win. That's a joke. The fourth is lack of round abuse devastates the argument. Well, one that there is offense, especially because this is in the plain text and the basis for the entirety of their advantage, which means that you should always err negative on this, especially in world which this is based off of arguments which would meet their framework and things like that, but allow for a better education that is more competitive.
How much?
938.